This podcast is brought to you by ITV Studios. From edge-of-your-seat drama to entertainment with serious buzz, we've got it all and then some. Want in? Head to itvstudios.com or grab the ITV Studios Watch Anywhere app to stream full episodes anytime, even offline. Big drama, bold formats, real stories, all under one roof from ITV Studios.
Step into the world of digital-first production at Next Wave, the brand new summit launching in Halle, Germany, this October. Documentary Campus presents Next Wave, the digital-first production summit at Industry Training Day. Curated by me, Justin Crosby, Next Wave brings together innovators and decision-makers driving today's digital-first production economy. Sessions will explore launching successful YouTube channels, moving from TV to digital production, monetizing catalogue content, transforming broadcast content for streaming platforms, building brand partnerships, and navigating the new world of commissioning. Next Wave is part of the Documentary Campus Industry Training Days, alongside the renowned Master School pitching event, creating a powerful space where filmmakers and executives connect, exchange ideas, and unlock market-ready opportunities. Join us in Halle, Germany on October the 31st and November the 1st. Register now at documentary-campus.com. That's documentary-campus.com. Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome to another TellyCast. This week I'm joined by actor Shaun Evans and executive producer Tom Leggett to talk about Betrayal, ITV Studios' darkly compelling new espionage thriller from Mammoth Screen. Best known for his long-running role in Endeavour, Shaun takes on the part of MI5 operative John Hughes, a man caught between a collapsing marriage, shifting office politics, and a looming terrorist threat no one else seems to believe is real. Written by award-winning playwright David Eldridge and directed by Julian Jarrold, Betrayal promises to be as emotionally intelligent as it is gripping. We're diving into the creative choices behind the series, the themes of trust and loyalty, and what sets this spy drama apart from the pack. Shaun, how are you doing? Thank you very much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for having us.
So let's start with the obvious. What drew you to this role then? John Hughes isn't your typical MI5 operative. He's dealing with threats, both personal and national. What hooked you in?
About 5 years ago, myself and Tom started a conversation about ideas for future projects or sort of worlds that we would be interested in telling stories about. MI5 kept coming back. We kept circling back to MI5. So that was the world of it. In terms of, from a character point of view, back to your question, I was sort of intrigued by the idea of someone having a midlife crisis. If you think of MI5, it's so exclusive and it's so sort of fantastical, or our fictionalized ideas of it. It's so fantastical. I thought it would be interesting if you could ground that in a sort of life event which virtually everyone to a greater or lesser degree will go through. So we were thinking about this chap who might be having a midlife crisis, who is now working at a high level at MI5. From that point, we then approached David Eldridge, the magnificent writer who I'd worked with before and long admired. And then the three of us began a slow conversation about building this world, building the character, and really drilling into the kind of difficulties that he might be facing. And I was intrigued or interested in, if he can't trust his physical health, if he can't trust his mental capacities, he's struggling in his most immediate relationships, and he's struggling in work as well. I thought all of those elements could potentially, set against the backdrop of international espionage, could make a pretty compelling story and make a pretty compelling character. So that was where it began.
And you've been really invested in this, haven't you? You're an executive producer on this series, so you've bwhen a key part of its development over the years.
Yeah, that's right. Well, like I say, it was myself and Tom originally about 5 years ago, when we began to speak about what the ideas of worlds that we would like to to inhabit and what stories we'd like to tell. So yeah, I mean, it's an amazing, great, good fortune for me to have helped to develop the idea and then to nurse it along and then to finally have made it this year, which was an incredible experience, and now for it to be out next year into the world. So yeah, it's been something that we've been nursing and guiding along the way, which is an enormous privilege for me because, you know, often if you're an actor or a director, a script can land on your desk. And it's sort of in a weird way, it's sort of at the end of the process then. And I mean, I've always been intrigued about trying to understand and be involved in every aspect of telling stories and making TV. And so this has been a joy from beginning to end.
Well, it looks fantastic. But Tom, coming to you. So Betrayal's, the title, does obviously quite a lot of emotional heavy lifting. There's a lot of emotional and political implications within the series. Tell us about, you know, what's at the heart of the story for you.
I mean, I think, Betrayal as a title is, I think, really apt for the show. I think betrayal is something is a theme that goes hand in hand with the spy genre. But I think what is surprising about the show is that it is exploring all different levels of betrayal in Sean's character's personal life. All the characters in the show experience a level of betrayal within their relationships with each other, and that is kind of at the center of the story in surprising and unexpected ways. And I think for me, the sort of heart of the show, which really is, the show is a brilliant thriller, and it delivers in terms of suspense and plot and unexpected twists and turns. But I think the heart of the show, which really is sort of what David brought to it in the writing, and is why he's such a brilliant writer. And originally, when Shaun and I talked about, is really a story about John, but also the characters around him who are sort of in the mid journey of their lives, looking back at what they've been and looking forward to something that feels very uncertain and quite terrifying. And that really is played out in a lot of the relationships, particularly the kind of central sort of three characters of John and his wife Claire, who's played by Romola Gary, and John's relationship with Maureen, who's played by Zara Mardi. And that is, I think, really at the heart of the show, is this sort of midlife question. And as Shaun said, the midlife crisis was something when we first started talking about it, and is very much there, but I suppose it's something that we all as human beings experience when we kind of reach half time, is that thing of, you know, what have we done? Who are the people we've been in the years before, and what does the future hold? And to play that all out within a kind of spy thriller context felt very kind of original and interesting, and I think is sort of there in the show.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Shaun, tell us about the role. John's not just a spy. He's a father, he's a husband, he's a man navigating a workplace that's changing around him. How did you approach playing somebody juggling such private and public pressure? Want to get ahead in digital-first content? The Drop is the go-to newsletter for industry professionals, delivering insider news, trends, and insights straight to your inbox. Navigate the fast-changing landscape of digital-first production, distribution, and monetization. Sign up now for free at dropmedia.co.uk and stay informed with The Drop.
Well, good question. Well, I feel like we're all, it's Walt Whitman, right? It says we each contain multitudes, and I think that's true. We've all, each of us, a son, a brother. We are who we are in the world, in addition to our professional life. But I think what's interesting about this, and what I was particularly interested in, if you cannot be upfront with your nearest and dearest about the things that you're dealing with in work on a daily basis, what does that do? The amount of pressure that you're under. But what does that do if you can't share that with the people that you love and that you see every day? What does that do to you? But also, what does it do to the nature of your relationships as well? If you're evading and being slightly dishonest or avoiding and blocking every conversation over dinner, what does that do to your relationship with your wife and indeed your relationship to your kids? There's a strange isolation in that. And so, yeah, you're right. He's juggling and spinning all of these plates, as indeed we all are in our lives. But the particularly interesting thing about this is, and what I wanted to focus on, was how the spinning of those plates becomes a very isolated thing for John. And as we meet him in the middle of his life, as Tom says, sort of reflecting back and looking forward to a very uncertain future, how does he square that circle, and what does it all mean? And then you touched on the point of a new and evolving workplace. I think that was a very interesting thing to sort of observe over the past 5 years, how the world has shifted since COVID, and rightly so. The pendulum has completely swung, and in a good way, and certainly, but what that means for everyone. So yeah, sort of in that kind of territory, I was interested in exploring, and it was that I was sort of focusing on, rather than just the sense of a harried man who has too much to do in his daily diary.
So, Tom, David Eldridge is known for his sharp and emotional writing. What has he brought to this project that perhaps we haven't seen in the genre before?
Well, I think when we first, I was a huge fan of David's play Beginning, which I saw in 2017 when it was on at the West End. And he's since written 2 more chapters in that trilogy. He wrote a play called Middle, and he's just about to mount End, which is going to star Clive Owen at the National. And I think what I love the most about Beginning is it was about 2 people who met at a house party and basically in their kind of late 30s, early 40s, choosing to begin a relationship with each other. And it was sort of pregnant as a play with all the things that I mentioned earlier about 2 people looking back on the choices they've made in their lives and deciding to begin and to start something new together. And I thought the play was just stunning and giving a sort of voice to things that are really not explored in drama. And when I spoke to Shaun originally about this idea, and I had a meeting with David, I thought the emotional arena that he was in would be quite interesting for the genre. What I didn't realise when we met him to talk about it is he had actually just been approached by John le Carré to adapt The Spy Who Came In From the Cold for the stage, which is coming to the West End later this year. It premiered in Chichester last year, and he was an absolute obsessive about the spy genre, and I didn't know any of this about him, but had really sort of done his homework and had a real insight and an attitude to it. And I thought, and we all thought, it would be interesting to bring what David is so good at in theatre, which is writing these incredibly real, emotionally truthful plays that are incredibly funny, and marrying that with the spy genre. And really, he brought both those things. He brought all of that, and it is in the show, is this incredibly emotional, funny, playful kind of quotidian dynamics between a husband and wife, but also has the kind of high stakes spy thriller beats and sequences that we all kind of expect and love from the genre. But I think in the fusion of the two, he's brought something that does feel very fresh, that feels very contemporary, feels very original. So that's really what he brought to it.
Well, there's a key moment in the synopsis where a source is murdered and John has to convince his own colleagues that this threat is real. Shaun, how much of this story is about being believed and the fragility of trust inside systems like MI5? That's
a really great question. I think a hell of a lot is about trust. I mean, look at the title, Betrayal. And so it works on 2 levels, right? I mean, how much can his personal relationships, how much trust exists there if you've been dishonest throughout the course of your working life to your wife? But then within the changing landscape of working inside Thames House, where a lot of things are obviously technological now and computerized in the world. This is a person who's still sort of working on hunches and working on instinct. But how do you quantify that? And I suppose that is sort of an interesting territory from which to base a story. I suppose that's what we're thinking, really. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. So, Tom, Betrayal is pitched as sharp, stylish and tense, and it's kind of on a par with international thrillers. What was the visual language that you and Julian Jarrell wanted to create for this series? Well,
I mean, firstly, Julian is an incredibly accomplished director who we were so excited when he became interested in directing the show, because we were all huge fans of his work. I was particularly thought Appropriate Adult, which was another ITV show that he did about the West, was extraordinary, with Dominic West, and Red Riding as well, and has had a film career as well. And I think when I talked to Julian, who is an incredibly thoughtful and incisive thinker, he didn't do that thing that a lot of directors do when you meet them, where they sort of bombard you with references and sort of bombard you with other film that are similar, or tonal or colour palettes and all of that. He was very absorbed in the scripts and the material, but the films we did talk about a lot, and I think it is borne out in the final in the episodes is things like The Conversation, the Francis Ford Coppola film with Gene Hackman, and The Parallax View, and Clute, and All the President's Men, those Alan J. Pakula films, which have a very particular style and a mood to them that is very much about kind of paranoia and uncertainty, and they use a lot of very long lens photography of characters being observed and being watched, and I've noticed as the sort of edit has progressed that language is in the show, that sort of that slow creep of suspense and fear is in there. And I think those films, particularly not just on a kind of a cinematographic level, but they also are really relevant to the world we live in now, which is a much more uncertain, unstable world, where the kind of truths that we've all lived our lives by are all kind of in question. And he sort of brought that to the show, and I think it feels very special, and I think Julian just kind of did that so effortlessly.
Shaun, now there's a hint of dark humour running through the script. Did that surprise you?
Did the hint of dark humour surprise me? No, not really. I mean, I'd known David, I'd worked with David previous, and I think that's sort of a leitmotif of his work, this humour which sort of is sprinkled on the top of really heavy and emotionally complex situations and people. I also think, it'd be pretty dreary if you're telling a story about a guy who's having a midlife crisis and it was all one obstacle after the next. So I think humour is a really great way to get into a story and to make a story more accessible. And then ultimately, of course, we're making a TV show, and so you don't want it to feel heavy. It should feel light and a delight to watch and enjoy. And humour is obviously a great way to do that.
I mean, is that a challenge as an actor to balance that, tension, absurdity, and the domestic drama elements in the show? Is that a real challenge for you?
Not a challenge at all. No, in fact, not a challenge at all. In fact, it's very rich and makes it very exciting. It's challenging when there's very little going on. It's far more exciting when there's a hell of a lot of things going on and there's a hell of a lot of things to play, because then it gives you the opportunity to try different things and to focus on different things, different aspects of relationships or different aspects of the character. It makes it a very rich landscape rather than it feeling like slim pickings.
So, Tom, character and psychology are really at the heart of this drama, but espionage often leans towards sort of tech and geopolitics, but Betrayal seems much more personal. Is that something that you were consciously steering away from, or more towards that personal experience?
I think one of the things we did really was an aspiration for the show from the very beginning, when Shaun and David and I first started talking about it, and we were unlike a lot of spy shows, which are often based on existing IP, we were like, this is going to be an original show. And so one of the main aspirations was for us to try and make the show as real as possible to what the life of a spy actually is. And we worked with an extraordinary man who is now himself becoming a very successful podcaster called Gordon Carrera, who at that point was working for the BBC, but was sort of doing consulting on TV dramas. And he really educated us that the reality of spying, the reality of being an MI5 officer is not the kind of high-tech, slick, glamorous world of a lot of TV shows and films that obviously James Bond has kind of led the way in putting out a certain vision of what that life is like, that it is much more like, you know, everyday jobs, because at the end of the day, you know, MI5, MI6, or as it's called, SIS, they're public institutions. They're no different to hospitals or councils. They're public institutions funded by the taxpayer, and they don't have the level of resources that we're used to seeing in things like Day of the Jackal or Slow Horses. They have to fight for resources to be able to put that into operations and to put that into investigations. And I think that's a very deliberate choice, is to look at, you know, the salary of being an MI5 officer is you know, it isn't necessarily what people might think it is, that it is still a civil service role. It's a public service role. People are doing it because they want to serve the public. And that means that in their personal lives, you know, it's the usual thing. It's the things that we all deal with, of, you know, what supermarket to shop in, and, you know, where you're, you know, are you shopping in Lidl or Sainsbury's, or, you know, that week, you know, budgeting, particularly if you've got a young family, doing all of that. And I think we've really tried to, as much as possible, represent that in the show, and show that spies, the reality of spying is not this really kind of glamorous world where everyone's swigging martinis and living and playing cards in Monte Carlo. That, you know, there is a great scene that in episode 1 where John is filling the washing machine, and that, when we were talking about it, we were like, there's never been a spy show where a spy is filling a washing machine, but obviously they do, and that is the reality of it, you know. And so we've really tried to put that in so that hopefully people who watch the show find it as thrilling and compelling as other spy shows, but also are being offered something slightly different that is closer, I believe, to the reality of it.
Yeah, a little bit more relatable and grounded in reality. Yeah. Shaun, now you've become something of a mainstay in ITV Studios' crime drama world, from Endeavour to The Bay to Until I Kill You, and now Betrayal. What keeps drawing you back to this world of morally complex investigations, and what sets Betrayal apart from those past roles?
Do you know what? In truth, I've been just incredibly lucky. There is no huge game plan with that. It's just the jobs that have landed and that have had the good fortune of coming my way. And I feel very grateful for that, and long may it continue. I don't feel like I've seen anything like this before. Each of those jobs felt very different. They each felt very different from the one which came before. I don't really quite know how to answer that question.
But I mean, there's obviously a thread running through those roles, but equally, you know, each of them is very different.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there is a thread running through them. I don't know, they sort of say, don't they, that you see your life through the prism of the job that you're working on at the time, or there might be something that potentially I bring to those jobs, which is something to do with where my head is at the time. And so there is going to be a sort of a similarity, I guess, or as you say, a common thread, connective tissue between it all. Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps as well, we're still too fresh from finishing Betrayal for me to say, oh, it's so different and this is how it's different from those previous things. Perhaps I'm still too closely connected to it to have any objective distance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you hope audiences will take away then, Shaun, from Betrayal? Is it just a cracking thriller, or is there something more that you're hoping lands emotionally or politically from the series?
Oh yeah, I mean, certainly, I think all of those things. Hopefully, it'll be a cracking thriller, and I'm hoping that people will feel emotionally and personally involved in it. But ultimately, I think, and I always say this, I'm such a broken record about it, but like, if it's a good story, well told, then in a way, I'm happy. You know, like if people enjoy it for escapism for an hour, then that makes me happy too. So I'm hoping that it entertains and moves and amuses people.
Well, Shaun and Tom, thank you so much for joining me on TellyCast this week. Betrayal premieres on ITV in early 2026 and is one of the most anticipated scripted dramas on the ITV Studios MIPCOM slate this year. So huge thanks again to Shaun Evans and Tom Leggett for joining me on TellyCast and for pulling back the curtain on what looks like to be one of the most talked about thrillers of next year. For more interviews from MIPCOM 2025 and beyond, hit subscribe, follow us on socials and check out the full slate of TellyCast episodes on YouTube or wherever you get their podcasts.